Hello, psychology students. Mr. G here with our first topic of Unit 4. And Unit 4 is basically what we call dealing with states of consciousness in the human mind. This first topic is going to be dealing with sleep and dreams. Our second topic is going to be dealing with basically drugs and pharmacology. So, let's jump into this first topic here about sleep and dreams. In this picture, this is supposedly some weird hypnosis thing. That's a topic we can get into a little later, but I am going to have you guys do a sleep journal project. So hopefully that'll help you kind of write down and kind of keep track of how many hours you're sleeping. What are you doing to help yourself get to sleep? Are you remembering any of your dreams? Things like that. So we'll be looking at that. And there'll be a sleep survey I'm going to have you guys do as well, just to kind of see where your sleep health is, if you will. All right, so let's define states of consciousness because that's what this unit is about. So basically, a consciousness is your state of awareness, of existence, awakeness, I guess, kind of, the sensations and thoughts and environments inside and outside your body. So again, we're dealing with sleep, being awake. There's what we call hypnosis too, as well as altered states, which would deal with people being in some forms of meditation or even drug use. And some of that is on the realm of, spiritual issues when you're getting into some of this stuff too. And we'll actually discuss that into the next topic. But all right, let's get into your sleep rhythms, or what we call biological rhythms. All right, so psychologists believe, that we're in a 24 to actually 25-hour cycle of wake and sleep. So basically, the average, at least recommendation, is to be awake about 16 to 17 hours of the day with about 8 hours of sleep, maybe seven, depending. Um, but some people do need a full 8 hours to feel fully functional. I mean, I have met people that could be fully functional in 5 or 6, but generally, the way our bodies are designed by God, a good say 7, 8 hours is only safe to say. Because what's happening is when you're getting into the sleep and wake cycle, your body is regulating its temperature, which it needs to do. There's biological rhythms that occur, changes as we age too. You'll see. I mean, of course, when you were a baby, you slept a lot, and then you got into your later childhood, you're awake. And I mean, some of you probably still nap, but you'll notice as you get over 40 years old and you get into your 50s, your body's going to need again to take naps more often, I noticed after I hit 40, yes. I mean, not every day, but at least a couple times a week, my body wanted to or needed to take a nap. So now humans, we're diurnal, right? So we're awake during the day, asleep at night, right? Whereas owls, bats, lions, any type of cat creature, really, rodents, they're what we call nocturnal because they sleep during the day to help conserve up their energy for the nighttime when they do a lot of their hunting. And that hunting, at least, historically for these creatures, takes up a lot of energy. So that's why they sleep so much during the day, especially cat creatures, which lions, I think, are the most, that are somewhere around 20 to 21 hours on average of sleeping a day, with somewhere around 3 to 4 hours of being awake and hunting and feasting, if you will. So very interesting how that works. Each creature. So, what is affecting that sleep pattern? What's going on inside the brain? We have discovered, at least psychology has discovered, that there's something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. That's a fun word to say. Basically, they believe it's kind of the master clock, if you will, located in your hypothalamus gland, and it then somehow, as you can see in this graph here, it says signals. And it's real small. Look how small the suprachiasmatic nucleus is. Sex signals to something in your brain called the pineal gland, all right? And that signal is basically being sent there to secrete melatonin, right, into your bloodstream to begin to kind of get you to the point where you're falling asleep, right? That's the sleep hormone, by the way. So, and you can see here in the evening, or part of your biological rhythm is when that bedtime is approaching for melatonin to be produced. Let's say, we're here in the middle latitudes, where it gets dark from a range of 4:30 to as late as 8:30 in the summer, right? When the sun goes down. Most of us, if you're in a normal biological rhythm sleep wake cycle in this area, that melatonin would start to be released sometime like after 9 o'clock on average. It's a little harder in some climates like further up north where there's a lot of variation in, sunlight and stuff like that, where you're going to probably have to do some things to help that melatonin get released a little bit better. Being dark outside, even if you're in the home, that kind of helps. But still, and a lot of people will take melatonin, the actual, supplement too. We'll talk about that here in a second. But let's talk about the moment of sleep. So sleep stages occur in what we would call 90-minute cycles through the evening or through the night. Let's say 8 hours of sleep, all right? You would actually go through that sleep stages, all four of them, probably at least 5 times in one 8 hour night. So the less sleep you're getting, the less time your body is able to go into those cycles, and probably the less it's good for your health, right? So the more you're going through that cycle, the better it is for your health. But using melatonin, again, a lot of people do that. I mean, there are sleeping pills out there too that are a lot more stronger, and we'll talk about those when we get into drugs. But things like Ambien and others out there, oh yeah, but you better go to sleep after you take it. Melatonin, again, a little more natural. It helps regulate that circadian rhythm. It can go as low as 3 milligrams. I've seen some melatonin up to 20. I don't think you need 20 milligrams. Maybe up to 10 or 5 to 10 would work for most people. You just got to be careful. There's the gummies out there too, and some people can knock those down, and people have gone to the hospital over it. So just remember the body does naturally produce melatonin. Again, as darkness falls, as there decrease as daylight returns too. So as you're hitting about 4 or 5 and later at night, later in the morning, that melatonin is increasing and orexin, or we'll talk about that, is being released. So, but melatonin, they have done some studies on it. It's very interesting. If you take the supplement, again, do it with caution. Small amounts are okay. They've actually made some connections that it can help with gallbladder stones. Again, I mean, I need to do more research, but they're saying cancer, depression, it could help with ADHD, Alzheimer's, and maybe what these things are helping with, it could be the fact that melatonin puts you into a deeper sleep. That's basically that stage 3 that we're going to talk about. And when you do get into stage 3, there's an immune system reset that happens. So that could be going on too. There's even some anti-COVID benefits too. And again, I think that relates to immune system reset that occurs in deep sleep, which melatonin can help you get into. But here's like a view of that circadian rhythm. This again would be an average for somebody living in, most of the world, right? Unless you have to work at night or something like that. But it is kind of interesting. So, but let's say you're at, I don't know, you're going to bed, or your body, let me see. Well, let's start in the morning. Yeah, let's start here about 6 a.m., right? Your body is at its lowest temperature and is rising about 6 a.m. Your blood pressure begins to rise again. Maybe by 7:30, your melatonin secretion has stopped and you're starting to get up. I know for me, on average, if I'm not getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to work on like a normal day where I really don't have to go to work, I could feel like sometime after 7:30, I really can't get into deep sleep so much anymore, right? And definitely that melatonin secretion has stopped and I'm beginning to get awake. And definitely by 10 o'clock, if you're healthy, you've had a good breakfast and everything like that, your highest level of alertness is supposed to be around 10 a.m. And it's funny because a lot of times you got to take classes early in the day. I don't know if you do better on tests earlier in the day or if you struggle on tests later in the day because you're not at your highest level of alertness, right? So I don't know. It's kind of an interesting thing, but this is where you're supposed to feel pretty alert. If you're playing sports or doing anything where it's going to involve coordination, psychologists believe in that circadian rhythm, your best coordination usually occurs in the mid-afternoon, as well as faster reaction times. And even your muscle strength and cardiovascular energy should be at its greatest by 5 o'clock, as that blood's been pumping in to you all day. And then your highest body temperature and highest blood pressure of the day is usually around dinner time. And then usually again, this is all depending on, when you wake and sleep, but they say on average would be 9 o'clock melatonin naturally begins to secrete into your through your body, and then you're into that sleep cycle. So it's kind of how they believe it works. So, all right, so let's look at the stages once you are into sleep. So, and you could actually see this from an actual EKG here. And this is your awakeness. You can see it's all up and down. And then your stage one sleep would be right about here, as you can see, right? And each of these, like from an actual length of these waves, is represents 1 second. So stage one, you're beginning to nod off. There's some sleep, but you're still kind of awake, but you're beginning to kind of fall into that, right? Usually you can't dream right in stage one. There's still some high frequency waves being, produced that are almost like you're awake, right? No rapid eye movement, no REM yet. But then you will go into stage two, a deeper sleep, but you could still kind of be easily awakened. Some people in this stage, there's still like there's a half of sleepness, so you could actually talk in your sleep at this point. Some people have even walked in their sleep in stage two, right? Stage three, you're in such a deep sleep, the waves go really slow. So maybe about here, the person, I don't know, would be in a stage three. You can be easily awakened, not as easily, I'm sorry, you're not easily awakened, my fault. And a lot of brain activity going on. Um, Probably some dreaming occurring. And this is where your body needs to get every night you get into bed and sleep. You need to get to stage three because this is where we believe the immune system gets reset in that stage. Okay. Then you go into stage four, or what we call REM or rapid eye movement stage, right? So if you actually did a study or watched somebody in this sleep, you would actually see under their eyeball, you would see their eyes kind of moving around a little bit like that, right? And they're moving very rapidly. There's even maybe a little bit of muscle twitches around the eyes. Some people even experience a little brief paralysis because they're in such a deep sleep. This is where the really vivid, almost like movie-like dreams or TV episode-like dreams occur, right? And the brain waves would move as if they're actually awake, even though they're asleep. So you would see those high up like that, right? It's a very mysterious. We don't know everything. There's some theories that maybe new memory formation is stored at this point in your sleep, whatever you took in that day. This is where it gets filed away. And unfortunately, though, the older you get, though, the percentage of time you're in REM decreases that we as we age. Maybe that's, kind of related to what happens when your memory begins to kind of fade, or even your short-term memory doesn't, there could be some issues because you're just not in REM as long. So here's the process. So you go to sleep, you're in stage one, stage two, deep stage three in monitoring people. Some people have come back down to stage two, maybe a little sleep talking, and then bam, straight into that REM, which is where the rapid eye movement and like the heavy brain waves and activity are going, right? So here are the EEG, as you can see, waves measuring sleep. I'll tell you, it's hard to sleep with all that stuff hooked up to you, man. You better give me something to really knock me out if you're going to try to st I just have a hard time. I did a sleep study last year. I went to a sleep clinic just to see if I had if I had see what do you call it? Sleep apnea, and I don't. So that was good. At least they actually did a home study where they hooked up one little thing on my finger and then, you know, and they didn't find anything with that. But then they said they wanted me to actually come into the lab. It was so hard to sleep with all that stuff hooked up to you. And oh, not fun. But I did fall asleep at some point, and they did not notice any type of sleep apnea for me. So that was good at least. But here's a long view of all the different stages of sleep. As you could see, this is what you would be like right now as you're watching this video. You know, you're concentrated, maybe you're talking off to the side or what taking notes, right? Right. And then of course, here's the different stages of sleep. Look at this right here, man. That's that delta wave that occurs in that deep sleep. Pretty cool. There's a view of your age, and you guys are just about young adults versus someone maybe my age or older. And you can see the amount of time spent in REM or REM sleep. See, at your age, you could spend a lot longer time and even increase the length of time in an 8 hour period. So right there, that's like maybe 4 times. Whereas someone my age, and look at it, it's longer. I may go into REM one, two, three, four, five, 6 times, but the time spent there is a lot shorter than someone your age. And I'm lucky if I could get up to 7 hours sleep. So last night, I think I got about 7 hours, maybe 7.5 hours. So I'm okay. And as you can see over your lifetime, you can see the average amount of hours spent in sleep. I mean, when you're a baby, look at this here, man. Woo! You could be sleeping almost 16 hours a day, right? And by the time you're about a year, it's about down to 13. Your toddler years, you're getting it down to about 10. And then someone your age, which is in this range right here, maybe about 8. Some of you are probably doing it longer during the summer. It's possible. You get into your adult life with work, you can see that sleep dropping a little bit, or maybe you're a new parent and the baby's keeping you up at night, or maybe stress of life is keeping you up. But a lot of times when you're getting over here by the time you're retirement age, you may have the time to sleep, but you just cannot sleep long straight. And yes, a lot of elderly people will take maybe sometimes multiple naps during the day because maybe they're lucky if they're getting 5, 6 hours of sleep a night. So, all right, let's talk about some sleep theory. So, why do we sleep? What are psychologists theorizing? Well, again, like I was mentioning, especially you're getting into that stage three, a restoration of your health, the immune system being reset, it's probably doing something with helping the mental processes, maybe information to be stored, memories to be stored. Maybe it's also helping brain remove what we call neurotoxic waste. Isn't that interesting? Our brain can have neurotoxicity and how maybe in a way it's kind of filing out, putting in the trash bin, if you will, thoughts, processes, memories, information that's maybe not needed. It's kind of interesting how that works, right? Maybe it helps consolidate the info in the day. And again, I was talking about memory. And again, sleep is a great way for um, de-stressing as well. Now, how long do each of God's creatures sleep? Look at this, bats. And I would throw lions in there too, about 20 hours a day. The house cat, maybe 12. I think it's closer to 18, maybe, as I look at my cat. But then again, I think she is up a good portion of the night roaming around. Again, we were talking about babies, a good 16 hours a day. Someone about your age, somewhere around 8. Dolphins sleep too. There's some really neat stories about how they are able to do that and even protect each other as the others are sleeping. A cow, lucky if they get 4, and a giraffe, again, lucky if they even get 2. Isn't that interesting? And yes, there is issues of what we call sleep deprivation, not being able to sleep. There was one guy, they have a reportedly stayed up 231 hours. So that's like what we're looking at, 9 days, right? Plus, and he was still somehow lucid and capable of doing serious intellectual work. He somehow wrote a beautiful poem in the process, even with no sleep. I mean, he's an exception. Look, most people need about 7 to 8 hours a night to feel completely rested and functional, right? And there's negative effects of not getting sleep too. I mean, there's tons of stuff. I mean, think about it. It's going to be hard for you to focus if you're not getting enough sleep. So it could show symptoms similar to ADHD because you just can't focus. But when you do have that sleep, you could focus a lot better. Some people have even had hallucinations. I wonder what this guy was doing with the 231 hours up straight. Makes you wonder, right? I mean, it's amazing the guy was able to write a beautiful poem, but did he deal with some type of cognitive impairment at some point, Did it, I love to see what the long-term effect on his immune system was because he didn't get into deep sleep for 10 days almost, right? And there's other issues here, as you can see. There's an issue of micro sleep. We do need sleep. You know, it's so great, especially when you're exhausted. Some of you have fallen asleep in class before, right? It's happened to all of us. Definitely don't want that to happen while you're driving or operating some pretty dangerous machinery. But there are sometimes you might be just kind of sitting even at home for a little bit, even with the phone in your hand, and maybe just for a few seconds to maybe 30 seconds, you slip into a quick half sleep and you nod and you're just like, whoa, drooping eyelids. You're like, ugh. And maybe what you're learning in class, you're like, what are we doing? And sometimes you're not even aware that it's happening. But if you're driving or operating machinery, it can be deadly if this happens, right? So, circadian rhythm disruptions. So, one of the most famous things is two, actually. It's jet lag from traveling, right? But it's also when we do that time change, that fall back, spring forward. So with jet lag, you're just out of sync because of just the different hours of daylight and darkness in the areas of the world that you're going across by time zone. Sometimes it could take you a week to readjust. When we flew from the East Coast here to Hawaii, which sometimes of the year we're about 6 hour difference, we were actually okay. I mean, I think we left here super early in the morning and we got to Hawaii maybe about 7, 8 o'clock at night, their time, which would have been our time close to midnight. I mean, we were okay still, because we got there when it was dark you know. But I'll tell you what, when we got there, we wanted to go to bed right away because in our circadian rhythm, instead of being 7, 8 o'clock at night, it was more like, midnight, 1 o'clock. We woke up, we slept the next day until 8 or 9, and we were okay the next day. I was a little tired, but coming back this way was harder because I think we left Hawaii, it might have been about 12:30 in the afternoon, right? And then by the time we got back here to the East Coast, Eastern time zone, I mean, it wasn't until like 7, 8 o'clock the next morning, which would have been in Hawaii time, maybe 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and it was really hard to sleep. You're all the concept because you take these red eye flights and you're flying in the middle of the night, and I was trying to sleep, but my body was still saying it's still like the afternoon. And then all of a sudden you're jumping into overnight hours, and now it's the next day in the morning. It was whacked out. So literally, it took 3, 4 days just to readjust back to being in this time zone again. So it's still Hawaii's awesome though. I'll deal with the jet lag coming back. And then also remember you have the issues of that fall back, spring forward too, right? Which again, Congress is trying to decide whether or not they're still trying to decide whether or not do we just stop that and just stay in one, either daylight savings or standard time, right? If we stayed in standard time, I believe, and I'm trying to remember what this is because there's daylight savings. If we stayed in daylight savings, that would be now. So right now it's the winter. In the summertime, we would be getting dark, I believe, instead of 8:30, right, in the evening, 9 o'clock, it would be more like 7:30, 8 o'clock. But it would be getting light, like instead of 5 o'clock in the morning, it'd be getting light in the summer at 4 o'clock in the morning. Some people think we should just switch the clocks in the spring and never switch them again. That way, the summers will be the same, but the winter, instead of it getting dark at 4:30, it would get dark at 5:30. Okay, 6 o'clock, and then the sun. That would be the issue in the morning. It would be darker in the morning, so it would be instead of the sun coming up at 7 to 7:30, it would be more like 8 to 8:30. But there's a lot of debate on what they think is the best. But here's something we do know. It's a major challenge to our circadian rhythm clocks doing this fall back, spring forward. And we're going to look at that here too. We'll talk about this more in class, but just some ways to combat if you're running into jet lag or how to prepare for it and how to recover from it. But check out this. This is what they're talking about with that spring forward, fall back thing. So this is the number of accidents, okay? Car accidents, all right? And on the bottom would be the Monday before the time change in the spring. So let's say, like, this is, I think we change clocks back like first or second week of March, right? So let's say this is the Monday, accidents are here. But after we've spring forward, you get less sleep because you're losing an hour of sleep, right? Look at how those accidents, those car accidents, especially in the morning, jump up. Or it could be even coming home because people's a little tired, you know. You're getting up an extra hour early for a while, it feels like. But in the fall, look at this. Because you've gained an hour of sleep by falling back, the number of accidents on the Monday after that time change actually go down. So this is why people are saying, you know what? This might save us maybe car insurance issues. This would save health, medical bill issues. It might even save some people from dying in an accident. So just something for our Congress to look at. I know Trump is really trying to push for just being in one, time the whole year. And there are people in Congress that would like that. So, but again, we talked about earlier just effects of sleep loss, and there's a lot of issues there too. But what about people who work overnight shifts? I mean, some of you have parents who are doctors or nurses or work for the police force. We have people that work in security that have to be awake all night. We need people at the hospital there awake all night. And what these people do is they have to come home. Let's say they go in at 11 o'clock at night and they work until 7 or 8 in the morning. They have to come home, eat a quick meal, and then go to bed by 9 or 10 in the morning. A lot of them will sleep until 10, I'm sorry, from 10 in the morning till 5 or 6 at night, and then they're awake for a little while to, have dinner and then get ready for work. And then they have their couple days off a week where they have to kind of decide, all right, am I going to sleep normal with the rest of my family? Like be awake during the day and sleep at night, or do I just stay on my sleep cycle and just sleep during the day, get some really dark curtains from my windows, right? And then try to fall asleep. Some people will do that. Some people will wear these eye masks, you know. But people that do work nights do suffer from higher rates of sleep deprivation because it's just whacked out and poor concentration. It is harder on your body if you're doing this long term. There's higher rates of auto accidents and work accidents. So, but we do need people to be there all night doing, monitoring our hospitals and, patrolling our streets like law enforcement. So, or even some factories need that overnight production as well, not just daytime production. So, what are some ideas of good sleep hygiene too? These, whether you have to work all night and sleep during the day, or what the normal rest of us would do, right? Sleep at night and be awake during the day, is make sure you do have a regular sleep schedule, right? Waking up and going to bed about the same time every day, right? I know that can vary in the weekends, of course, too, because you may not have to get up as early, but at least try to set a time even on the weekend not to get up any later than, right? Try, and now some of you probably could do this. You probably could have a cup of coffee or a soda with cola caffeine in it a few hours before bed and you'll be fine. But a lot of people, I wouldn't recommend 6 hours before going to bed any caffeine, right? Avoid any extended naps. Naps are great, but you don't want to go over 2 hours of a nap during the day. It's going to be harder to go to bed at night, right? Try to stay away from any naps after three because that'll really screw you up at night too, right? And some people would even say bedroom should only be for sleeping, right? Not for sitting there and you just standing around, watching TV for like maybe watch TV in your living room and then go to bed in your bed and go to sleep there, not have TV in there. Also cell phone and all the blue light, keep that out of reach of your bed. If you have your phone, plug it in way on the other side of the room or in another room. That way you don't see that or hear that thing going off at night, which can mess you up or be a temptation for you to scroll through before you go to bed, right? Take a shower before bed. I know a lot of people like to do this. It can relax the body, it could clear out your sinuses, less snoring at night, helps you breathe. Stay away from a large amount of meals before bedtime. Going to bed full just feels bad. You'll get heartburn. That might mess up with your sleep. And your room should be dark and have a cooler temperature, most of us, right? That would be 60s to low 70s. And maybe some of you can sleep when it's like 80 degrees in the room. I mean, certain parts of the world, that might be the reality because you don't have air conditioning or whatever. But they say most of us, as long as you're covered well, can sleep in a room that's in the 60s to low 70s, right? That also, your body needs that regulation of temperature to sleep well, too. How about have a relaxation ritual? If you have a hard time falling asleep or you just want to go to sleep peacefully, spend time talking to the Lord. Open your word and read that for a while. Do a little bit of breathing exercises. Try not to do too much hard exercise and work out before they go to bed because that might kind of get you amped up. It might be harder to go to bed. Exercise may be no more than 2, 3 hours before you go to bed. Anything within that to go to bed, just save it for the next morning. All right. So, what are the major sleep disorders to know? You all may have heard of insomnia. That actually affects about 10 to 20% of the adult population. So, if you have insomnia, there are actually several types here. Having trouble getting to sleep, how about staying asleep? You might be able to fall asleep, but then you wake up and are like, oh, I can't go back to sleep. And then you begin to think about it and worry about it. How about trouble returning to sleep after awakening? That's all part of those things. And people do struggle with it. They'll be looking at their clock or picking up their phone and looking, oh, what time is it? You know, but people that have insomnia, usually they have high levels of autonomic nervous system activity. So there's a lot going on with their brain and their nervous system. They might be struggling with a lot of anxiety or stress in their life. Look, it can happen. There, like all of us go through hard times, if you're going through the death of somebody, a breakup, just you're trying to finish out something at school, big project that can really mess with your sleep. Most of the cases for a lot of people, those things are temporary, but if this is a constant thing that's lasting months and months, you need to get some help from that, right? There are people who struggle with a lot of pain physically, back issues, neck issues, legs, and so on. That can make sleeping very difficult. I've had issues. Thank the good Lord, it's been many months, but I had a sciatica issue in my back, and I couldn't sleep. I tried every position. I tried the couch, my own bed, my this recliner I'm sitting in now, and nothing was providing any relief for it. And I lost a lot of sleep during that period too. So, but thank God that ironed itself out. But these are things that people go through. How about depression? Um, that can really, now some people can go in the opposite with that and try to sleep away their depression. They just don't want to get out of bed and they just don't want to be awake because for them to be awake is to be depressed. So they'll try to sleep as long as possible. Others are so depressed they can't sleep. So certain medications that you take, maybe medications for pain or other medications, that can mess with your sleep. Steroids, and I'm not talking about those roids that get you beefed up. I'm talking about you could be taking a steroid for maybe, I don't know, some type of respiratory issue you're having or something like that. I've had to take that after certain things, and man, those get you amped up, and it's really hard to sleep when you're on those steroids. Some of them will help you. Some of the steroids are like for like allergy issues too. You got to be careful. Now, there's another one that's like almost the opposite of insomnia. It's narcolepsy. That's like you're literally going into a rapid sleep, and that's scary. And you're going even into REM sleep, which is the deep, deep one, right? And the problem they found with people who have narcolepsy is they don't have enough orexin. So, orexin is the hormone that wakes you up, right? Melatonin is the hormone that begins to get you sleepy. But with orexin, these people that have narcolepsy, their body can't produce enough of it. So, they're having massive plunges into sleep, and it could last up to 15 minutes. Again, this is not good if these people are driving, operating heavy machinery. There's what we call cataplexy, which is narcoleptics can also suffer sudden loss of even their muscle tone. They also go even limp like this. I've seen this happen with students before. I had one student, we definitely think he had narcolepsy. Great kid, very smart, did well, but I worried about him driving. So, and you might have heard me mention earlier about sleep apnea, and that is another issue we would consider a sleep disorder, very dangerous. They say nowadays it affects about 18 million Americans, many of whom are overweight. The word apnea means without breath, and the person who has this while they're sleeping, basically what's happening is they could be stopping breathing as much as 500 times in one night. So the extra mass around their throat area is causing obstructive, sleep apnea and could even block up their airflow as they sleep. So, um, 1 in 50 Americans suffering from sleep apnea are actually currently undiagnosed. So there's a lot of people that haven't gone to a sleep clinic and had a study done or worked with their doctor. And even 1 in 3 people, even as young as 15, there's young people who are now. So I guess the total, if we were looking at about 18 million suffering from it, that's about 1 in 15 Americans. So people with sleep apnea, again, a lot of them they find out they have an overly thick palate somewhere in the mouth area there or an enlarged tonsil blocking their airway, especially if they're laying on their back, is where it can get really bad. You're laying on your side, it might be a little better, but these episodes can last as long as 90 seconds where they're stopping to breathe. Surgery of the palate can be helpful. Elevating the bed up, especially you have an adjustable bed, those are pretty helpful. In more extreme cases of apnea, sufferer is actually hooked up to an oxygen at night or a CPAP machine. And it could also jack up your blood pressure, all this breathing and not breathing, and the snoring can be incredibly loud because of this. So some of you may know somebody who has sleep apnea and you've heard them snore. So we're going to watch several videos about this. Shaquille O'Neal, famous basketball player from the Los Angeles Lakers. You're going to see how he dealt with it. We're going to talk about the zero gravity position for sleeping can help with that and a couple other things. So this is a picture of me and my brother. Oh goodness, man, we're looking, woo, it's a little while ago. But my brother here on the right-hand side, his name is Mike, struggled mightily with sleep apnea for a while. This is a picture of him hooked up to the sleep CPAP machine, a continuous positive airway pressure mask. And I'll tell you, this would not be fun sleeping with on, but it's life-saving for someone who has severe sleep apnea. Now they have ones now that are not as intrusive of these, or you can wear a mouth guard type thing too that can kind of open up the mouth a little bit and allow the airway to have a little bit more freedom for air movement. Another issue with sleep could be nightmare disorder. So you may not have sleep apnea, but some people, especially children, can be afflicted. Very story-like, elaborate, threatening dreams can be going on, and it could be multiple times a week, even multiple times a night. And of course, most of this is happening in the REM sleep stage, right? And they do believe stress seems to be a contributing factor as well as night terrors, right? More extreme than the nightmares. These are actually happening in the stage three sleep, all right? And they do say it affects males more than females. Panicky screams where they're screaming at night, waking up the whole household, right? And sometimes it could be also sleepwalking combined with it. So they're running and screaming, but they're sleeping while this is happening. PTSD in many cases is a contributing factor. Large amount of combat veterans struggle from night terrors, or people who have been through a very traumatic situation, like a natural disaster, like an earthquake, or their house being ripped apart by a hurricane or tornado, and they're waking up with night terrors months after that, right? And a lot of times they don't even remember the content of the dreams. If you had nightmare disorder, yeah, it's so vivid. You're waking up. Yeah, I just dreamed about these monsters. But like with night terrors, some of these folks wake up and they're like, what happened? Where am I? Dude, did you know you were running and screaming or you were screaming bloody murder in your bed? I don't remember what that was about. That happens with those folks. Tranquilizers can sometimes help these folks and maybe even make the dreams less crazy for them and so on. Now there are people that do just simply sleepwalking. They may not be screaming, but again, this is something that it can occur in the stage 2 to 3, and it occurs a lot of times with children. About 5% of all children, they believe in the United States, have a sleepwalking disorder, and you kind of remain sound asleep while moving about with your eyes even open, right? That's why you're not in REM sleep. If you were in REM sleep, your eyes would be closed with the eyeballs moving. No, you could be literally eyeballs open completely, but you are sleeping. And an expressionless look on your face and usually don't have any memory of that happening. It's not harmful to awaken a sleepwalker. Just be careful when you do it. Make sure they're not by like steps getting, or something like that. And a lot of people grow out of it too. I had a cousin who did this a lot, and I used to live with my cousins for a while I was in college, and it did get crazy. Like he did one night. I caught him. I went up to go to the bathroom. I was like, "Where is he at?" Because I slept in the same room with him. And I went over and he was literally standing at the edge of the steps. We were at a two-story house and he was getting ready to fall. And I literally just gently said, "Keith, you all right, man? Come on, let's just go back to bed." And his eyes were like open too, but he was sleeping. And the next morning, he had no recall of whatever happened. Wild stuff, huh? We'll watch a video in class of a guy who actually um, ran outside. And they said he did this on a couple occasions, but the last time he did it, he literally ran outside and got hit by a truck and killed. So, but anyway, all right. So there you go. There's sleep. That's topic one of states of consciousness. Hopefully, you learned a little something. And we'll be back for the second topic here, where we're going to look at drugs and pharmacology and its effect on the mind. All right. So take care.